mother's maiden name. Very nice.
Good morning everybody. Please take your seat. Buenos días a todas y a todos. Je vais parler français puisque hier je n'ai pas parlé français. J'espère qu'il y a des francophones et qui vont ils vont utiliser la langue de Molière parce que comme j'ai dit hier, l'Europe est une entité multiculturelle où on doit vraiment cultiver la diversité dans l'unité. Vous savez que c'est la devise de l'Union européenne. Donc aujourd'hui, c'est à vous de travailler. On va ouvrir l'école de la démocratie. Aujourd'hui, je suis accompagné d'Anna qui travaille dans l'équipe des réseaux sociaux et Priscilla qui l'année passée était une étudiante de la School of Democracy et qui maintenant travaille chez nous. Je suis accompagné aussi du secrétaire général adjoint Fraser Clark. Et en fait, je vais être très bref puisque hier j'ai fait l'introduction politique. Donc j'espère que vous avez bien dormi ou que vous êtes bien amusés ou les deux et que vous êtes plein d'énergie pour travailler aujourd'hui. Je sais qu'on a un ennemi, c'est le soleil, mais je vous demande quand même de bien être dans les workshops et de bien travailler. Juste quelques mots sur notre groupe. Donc on est le deuxième groupe au Parlement européen, on a 189 députés. On est le seul groupe qui avons les 28 délégations, les 28 pays pour le moment. J'espère qu'on va garder 28, qu'on ne va pas revenir en arrière et arriver à 27. Et nous avons travaillé le début de cette législature, ce qu'on appelait la grande coalition. Parce que comme vous savez, le Parlement européen, c'est un Parlement de minorités. Il n'y a que des minorités, plus ou moins grandes, mais il n'y a personne qui a une majorité absolue. Donc, pour faire avancer les dossiers, il faut composer avec les autres groupes. Et chaque fois qu'on a un rapport, moi j'étais député, je peux vous dire qu'on part de zéro, il faut négocier avec tout le monde. C'est pas comme quand on est dans un Parlement national où on a une majorité, on avance et c'est comme ça. Donc, pendant la première partie de la législature, on s'est centré, on a travaillé exclusivement prioritairement avec le PPE, mais depuis janvier 2017, on a décidé de prendre notre propre ligne, d'imposer nos idées et en essayant de travailler avec la partie la plus à gauche de l'hémicycle. Donc voilà, c'était juste pour vous situer. Fraser, Dana et Priscilla vont vous expliquer comment vont se dérouler ces journées. Et la dernière chose que je vais vous dire, vous avez reçu quelques petits cadeaux. Et moi, comme tout le monde, on a des défauts, je suis un fanatique de football. Donc chaque année qu'il y a le mondial ou l'euro, je fais des calendriers. Alors ceux qui n'aiment pas le foot, c'est très bien parce que comme ça, ils peuvent savoir quand les cinémas sont libres et quand les restaurants sont libres. Et ceux qui aiment le foot, vous avez ça. Et je suis aussi... Mon deuxième défaut, c'est que je suis un fanatique du Real Madrid. Donc voilà, maintenant vous me connaissez un peu mieux. Mais maintenant, c'est à vous de travailler, c'est à vous de parler, on vous écoute. Et bonne School of Democracy. Et demain, oui, après-demain, lors de la clôture, je vous dirai quelques mots encore pour évaluer un petit peu cette School of Democracy. À vous de travailler. Suerte.
First of all, thank you all for coming from the four corners of the European Union and beyond to this fourth School of Democracy that we've run during this parliamentary term. This will be the last one that we'll be having before the European elections here in Reggio Emilia. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen after the elections, but it's a great pleasure to have you here. Thank you for coming. And if you are looking forward to this event half as much as I am, then you're going to be very excited indeed, I hope. And you will have a very enjoyable couple of days talking about democracy. I just wanted to make a couple of points about the programme. We will have two plenary sessions today and tomorrow on the issues of identity and citizenship today, and for the many, not the few, sustainable revolution tomorrow. Before we come to the plenaries, you'll be broken up into three workshops which are set out in the programme. Just to say that on the we have a couple of small changes to the programme. Unfortunately, Catherine Fieschi, who was one of the speakers on the first workshop, is unable to attend due to transport problems. She's got stuck in France. And our guest speaker, who we were hoping to have tomorrow afternoon, unfortunately was not able to come because of the changing situation in Italian politics. And you know the situation has changed quite a lot in Italian politics recently. That we're sad, obviously, to not have a guest speaker tomorrow afternoon, but the advantage of that is one of the issues that students raised with us in previous years is that they would like more time to discuss between themselves, and you will have much more time tomorrow afternoon to give us your feedback on the event and your views on democracy tomorrow. I could see from the discussion with Paul Collier last night that I think we ran out of time for questions. Obviously, it's delightful to see that so many people want to get engaged and discuss. And I hope that you'll become very much involved in speaking up and speaking out in the workshops. You're not just here to listen, but also to speak and to tell us your views. That's what this is all about. Just a couple of practical things again on the workshops. The first workshop on revolt of peripheries against the centre will be taking place in here. The second one on multiculturalism and its critics will be on the first floor in room D123. And the third one on who is afraid of the roots will also be on the first floor in room D167. There are signs up with the list that you may well have forgotten. Everybody knows which workshop they are in, don't they, or not? No. If you've forgotten which workshop you're in, your name is on a list outside, so you can see which workshop you've signed up for. So as Javier said, and I insist, please do speak up, do take part, and don't feel that your views are not valued. I have a number of thanks to give in the organisation of this event. I'm the overall project manager, but this event could not have taken place successfully without the massive involvement of a number of people on the preparatory team. It's difficult to single out individuals, but there's one person who does a lot of the logistical work and strategic work in making sure that everything runs smoothly. That's Nadia Boutini, who is here, this is her last School of Democracy event because she's retiring from the group this year, I understand, and we will miss her very much. And if anything that's going well here, you can thank Nadia for. So thank you, Nadia. So I don't want to sound like an Oscar ceremony, but I'd also like to thank the people who are involved in preparing the programme and contacting the speakers, in particular the three people who are running the workshops. That's Giovanna Pereschi, Jean-Louis Verheiden and Anna Colombo. Also Alberto Corsini and Francesco Ronchi have been involved in contacting the speakers and making sure we have a full programme here. Kathy Van Acton has made sure that the programme holds together, and again she's been in direct contact with most of the speakers and making arrangements for them. And Sonia Chapotel, who is here, has been, I think, in contact with a lot of you individually and making sure that your arrangements are all in order, that everything is there for you. We have also, of course, the European Parliament team with Patricia Neuchel and Mark Jorensen and the interpreters and the logistics team there. Without all of these people, this event would not be the success that it has been. So I'd like to thank them for everything that goes well here. Any errors, anything that goes wrong is my responsibility, so if you have any complaints, do come up and see me. You will see the other people in the workshops, and hopefully you'll interact with them during the course of the next couple of days. Finally, of course, I'd like to give my greatest thanks to all of the speakers who've given up their time and commitment and their knowledge and their experience free to take part and share with you in this great celebration of democracy. Thank you very much.
Gracias, Fraser. Ahora vamos a tratar un tema, le voy a pasar la palabra a Dana y a Priscilla. porque creo que es muy importante, como dije ayer, comunicar, poder contarle a la gente lo que hacemos y también tratar de convencerles que si queremos una Europa que avance, pues solo los progresistas podemos hacerlo. Hemos reformado el Departamento de Comunicación que dirige Uta Tutlis, que está aquí con nosotros, pensando ya en las elecciones, porque aunque no se puede decir oficialmente, porque está prohibido en el Parlamento, pero estamos en campaña. También hemos creado un departamento específico para preparar las elecciones, así que, Dana, dinos cómo hacemos para convencer a la gente y que nos voten y seamos el primer grupo parlamentario en el 2019. Gracias.
Thank you very much. I know I promised I'm going to give you the secret to winning the elections, but that's not going to happen because you have to follow us on social media. Sorry. Yeah, I promised this, but I've changed my mind a bit, so I'm going to talk about change today because change, whether we like it or not, is very important and we're all a part of it, and it's basically triggered by one huge spark. It's basically our desire. If we don't like something around us, we fight to change it. So you've got three ways to do that. First, you need to be true to yourself, to listen to your inner core, to listen to your beliefs, basically. Be simple. As Javier said yesterday, if you feel like explaining something, whether it's in real life, on our social media, explain to it like you would do it to your mother so she understands. And third of all, be ready to listen to people around you, to listen to your enemies, to people who don't really connect with you. I've had one of my previous bosses, he told me that when you write something, when you say something, rest assured that there are at least 5 people around you who know more about the topic than you do. Be ready to listen to those people and take in what they have to offer because it's quite important. Now, you've been selected to come here because a handful of pretty smart people had the idea that you're able to change the people and the societies around you. So, yeah, don't let them down. No pressure here. So, going back to social media, as I promised, we tend to stick to the same 3 criteria. We're true to ourselves, we're true to our beliefs. We, as the social media and communication team, as well as the whole group we work for, we try to use simple language, whether it's in visuals, whether it's in videos, whether it's in the posts themselves. Simple language so it's accessible to everyone and everyone understands, and we try to listen. And in order to listen, we've created this amazing initiative called Europe Together. I'm sure most of you know it. Most of you are already Together ambassadors, and a big hands up for all of you. And if you want more details on that initiative, go to europe-together.eu or come to me in any of the breaks, and I'm more than happy to talk you through and to teach you to tell you how you can become Together ambassadors and create your own events in your own home countries with our help so we can disseminate this beautiful information we share together. Thank you all for coming here, and I'm looking forward to meeting you personally and to chatting with you.
Gracias, Dana. Priscila, cuéntanos cómo fue el año pasado y desde el año pasado que estás con nosotros, cómo te va. Cuéntanos.
Okay, no pressure. Hi guys, good morning. I had the opportunity to speak to most of you yesterday, either during the Go Local or during the dinner, which was fantastic, on my experience last year. But I'll try to summarize as quickly as possible my highlights of the event and how it's shaped me going forward. The first thing that I wanted to mention on my favorite part of the School of Democracy last year was being in Reggio Emilia generally. I've never been to the region before, and beyond having fantastic food and drink, it became quite obvious that it was not chosen by accident. The Cervi Institute particularly was a highlight for me and my peers last year, because after spending the whole day debating and arguing, you really were inspired and motivated by our comrades in the past on how they dealt with issues that we're facing today of fascism, racism, and ultra-right rhetoric spreading around Europe once again. So that definitely was a highlight, and tonight you're going to absolutely love it, as will I, again. The second thing I wanted to mention that I particularly enjoyed was the workshops I attended. Much like this year, very well thought out and specialized, and beyond having great panelists and great moderators, the open discussions was really where everything came to light. You know, I felt extremely free to express my opinions and to be vocal and not to feel, you know, scared or prejudiced or vulnerable in saying what I felt on specific issues, but then also listening to the opinions of other people who have a different background, different upbringing, come from different countries, and have a different perspective on the same subject. So, of course, you know, our discussions were very heated and fiery, and you didn't always agree. But the program also allows for great social settings, so you can then enjoy a drink with the same people that you were arguing with the entire day, and all's well that ends well. And the third thing, which probably is kind of the highlight of everything, is the people that you're surrounded by today and throughout the rest of the event. And I don't want to sound cliche and say, you know, look to your left, look to your right, that person might be the future progressive or socialist leader in their respective countries or region, but that actually might be the case. But more than anything, that person on your left or on your right, in front of you, behind you, will be your next couch or your next free bed as you're traveling around Europe. And if my experience is anything to go by, these people will also become lasting friends, as Dana will let you know. You become part of a network as School of Democracy that spans beyond just your peers of this event. You'll become part of a network of nearly 500 people who have been through the same intense 2 days as you. We're a community. You'll be involved in initiatives, writing blogs, articles, attending events and conferences, and part of the family, essentially. And you might not know everyone that's on that group, but trust me, through your S&D experience, you wouldn't get to know much of them, at least. And to finalize, really, my experience last year was my first ever experience of understanding what the S&D group does, point blank. I wanted to attend because, you know, in light of, obviously, Brexit, I still wanted to show that I feel European, and I wanted to still be part of the dialogue and the progressive message in Europe. So I wanted to attend. I was really happy to be selected. But post that, I also wanted to become an ambassador, and I wanted to carry on making sure my voice was heard and that of young people around Europe. So I continued attending events, together events. So I will really, really encourage you throughout the next couple of days, make your voice heard, but think also about how you can be more engaged later on with our group, create Go Local events, attend our together events, tweet, Facebook, Instagram, let us know what you think, because more than anything, your declaration and your words here don't just get thrown away once we're finished. It makes a lasting impact on the group's rhetoric and the group's strategy, but also it's extremely important for the members of parliament who then read your words and understand what you want in the future. So eat well, drink well, but debate even harder, and that's it.
Bueno, ahora os toca ir a dialogar, debatir, trabajar. Y sobre todo, si tenéis ideas o sugerencias, por favor, tenemos que ir adelante. No dejemos que nos las roben. Os voy a decir una cosa. La idea de Interrail, gratis para los que cumplan 18 años, surgió en nuestro grupo. Pero nos pusimos a debatir que sí, que no, que si era demasiado elitistas. Llegó el PPE, la cogió y la está vendiendo a todos. Así que si tenéis ideas, además está, que no la había visto, está Michael Hoppe, estaba hablando antes del departamento que va a llevar la campaña electoral y ha creado una caja de ideas, o sea que si acaso, Mijael, levántate que te vean, ahí está Mijael. Así que si tenemos buenas ideas, tenemos que llevarlas hasta el final. Así que ahora a trabajar, a divertiros y sobre todo disfrutar de esta experiencia. Pero creo que Fraser tiene que deciros algo antes de empezar los workshops.
It's not about today, but it's about if you take nothing else away from this couple of days experiencing democracy, it's about the importance of taking part. And many of you will have been too young to vote in the last European elections, but certainly you'll be old enough to vote in the next European elections, which are taking place from 23 to 26 May next year. One of the great things about being a European Union citizen is wherever you live, you have the right to vote in the European Parliament elections. So please, if you do take nothing else away from this event, make sure that you remember to sign up and that you're on the list to vote in the European elections next year. Thank you.
Hello, good morning to all. Welcome to the workshop, The Revolt of the Peripheries Against the Center in the context of the School of Democracy. I'm very happy to be here to moderate this debate. My name is Branko Benifei, MEP, member of the European Parliament, elected from Italy, member of Employment and Social Affairs Committee and Foreign Affairs Committee, and chair of the Youth Intergroup. So I'm very much into this conflict of young people of the peripheries that feel that they are excluded and are not very much trusting the institutions. I'm happy to be here again after a few years of this very good initiative of my political group, of my S&D group, because I think that it's very important that we give opportunities for young people from all over Europe, like you are, to meet, discuss, practice democracy, come here and find out what we are talking about in the European Parliament, in the European institutions, meeting with experts. In your case today you will have the unique occasion to have a debate and exchange with Fabrizio Barca, who has been working a lot on this topic of the relation between peripheries and the center, both as academic, as an intellectual, a public intellectual, and as a minister in Italy, working also with Europe, with the European funds, etc. But he will talk himself about his views. He's a good friend, and I'm sure he will find his contribution very enlightening for you, and I'm sure we will have a very good exchange like in the past. I've been moderating also in the last years, and I know that usually we have a good, very interactive debate. The topic of today is very, very crucial for the future of our continent. I will not delve into other considerations from my side. Only one, and first of all, I also want to thank all the group staff, Anna Colombo, who is our advisor that is being organizing this with us, and all the group staff that is here. And I just want to say, before giving the floor to Mr. Professor Barca, I give you one example, very concrete, from my experience recently in the European Parliament as rapporteur for the implementation of the Youth Employment Initiative. It has been very interesting to look. Many of you probably know what the Youth Guarantee is, as a program that has been developed in these years, put in place for helping young people finding job opportunities, finding matching for their skills and opportunities to start being part of the labor market, having a job, etc. Well, it's very interesting to look, if you look at the data, that the most problematic feature in terms of implementation of this program, which has been for us as S&D one of our flagship initiatives. We pushed for it to be put in place by Barroso Commission. We developed it during this mandate. We are happy that the next MFF, the multi-annual financial framework, the next budget of the EU, is foreseeing to maintain the program, and we will see if also with the amelioration that we want to put in place in the regulation behind it, also to make higher quality, to as a standard, to have stricter criteria to use European money. But let me say and conclude and then give the floor to Mr. Barca, that one data that we have is striking. What we have been in all European countries, and especially in some of them, including the one where you are now, but in a large number of them, we were not able with this European program to reach the more peripheral young people, the long-term NEETs, the ones from the more peripheral regions. So even with this very narrow and very specific example from my direct experience as a legislator, I can give you this example, that we have also in the kind of support that we are giving through the European programs to young people, in this case especially to young people, but we can extend it obviously not just to young people, we have a very uneven support given to people more central and in various terms, economic, geographical, in terms of opportunities. So we are giving opportunities to those who already had ones. And the peripheral people, the peripheries that are, and we will get into that in this debate, revolting against the center, they were also by this program not reached properly. So I wanted to give you this very specific example, not because I want to obviously leave to our rapporteur of today, our speaker, the broader sense, but to give you just a sense of from my side, from my work as a legislator, how concretely we see this divide, this situation that also from the institutions is not properly addressed. I see it in my daily work. So thank you to Professor Barca for being here with us, and I give you the floor.
I need to push anything? Yes, I do. It's fine. Let's see whether we manage to put together something interesting that you can bring to the plenary, right? That's the purpose of the exercise. I will very briefly clarify what I mean by the revolt, since the revolt to the periphery, what is the revolt? I will say something on how to avoid this revolt degenerating into a clear authoritarian dynamic, which we see all over, and even how to turn this revolt into an opportunity. I'll do that in 4 steps. First, the authoritarian dynamic. What is taking place today is an authoritarian dynamic. I don't use the word populism, it's improper. I will not deal with it. It is adopting a definition which is improper use in Europe. It doesn't fit to the world. What we are witnessing is an authoritarian dynamic, which is made of 3 components. People, an increasing number of people are intolerant of diversity. They have lost trust in institutions and experts. And third, they demand close communities and tough sanctioning authorities. These are the 3 features. The reference, I'll give you a couple of references here and there, because this is not a conference, but you need to, if you want to go into detail, the most important reference is The Authoritarian Dynamic, a beautiful book by Karen Sen, 2005. Democracy, which rests on everything that the authoritarian dynamic is attacking, public debate, diversity, balancing powers, and expertise, is threatened. Okay? I'm making statements because we discussed them. The European Union is particularly threatened for a very simple reason, because its democratic legitimacy is weaker than the democratic legitimacy of any state. So it relies on continuous consensus. Let me be very tough and clear about it. What is this consensus? The Germans need to agree, needs to accept that to buy Italian debt, and the Italians need to accept not to use devaluation when the Germany makes a big surplus in its balance. This is being together, okay? If the Germans and the Italians do not accept these 2 things, then we are breaking. And Germans and Italians will not accept it if the majority of them think that they are not taking a benefit from it, actually that their life is worsening due to Europe, which is what large amount of population in Europe now believes. Having said that, this revolt is an opportunity. It is an expression of a very deep, subdued tension. What is a subdued tension? It's a tension that has been there, that it has strong causes, and that we have kept down by giving money, cheap money, to the people, mortifying them. That's what we did with the responsibility of the progressive and the left in Europe, all over. Okay? So the fact that it now is coming out is positive, is not negative, although it is not yet creating any movement and any sense of social change. But the fact that it is not repressed is a positive thing, okay? Can be turned into an opportunity. This was my first point. Second point, what is the cause of this thing? And here I come to the peripheries. It's very simple. Let's not be complex. It's inequalities, okay? Inequalities. The subdued tension is due to the fact that a large amount of the European population feels unease at a very low level, the lowest, the second lowest, or they feel extremely vulnerable. They feel that there is no future either for them, or at least there is no future for their kids, i.e. for you. They're falling behind compared to the reflexive people, to the resilient people. There are lots of resilient people, okay? I'm a resilient person. My kids are resilient because they were born in a family that, and they have the culture, and they have some base, so they can make the most of Europe. It's easy for the people being born in some people's families to make the most of Europe, okay? Right, so inequalities. The numbers are known, you know where to find them. Okay? It is an economic inequality, an enormous economic inequality, wealth inequality first of all. Capitalism is about accumulating wealth. And the wealth has been accumulating in the hands of few. I'll give you a number for Italy that we estimated no later than 7 days ago. During the crisis, 2014, from 2008 and 2014, the 5,000 richest adult, mostly men, of Italy, increase their share of wealth from 2% to 10%, okay? If you consider that 50% of the Italian population has 5% of the wealth, it means that the 5,000 richest people in Italy pass from having less than half to having twice as much as the wealth of the 50% of the population. There is not much to explain why people are upset, right? So economics is part of the story. Very simple, not complicated. Piketty, patrimonialism, and the sense that is deteriorating capitalism. Capitalism is based on the fact that the richness and the increase in income of a few is recognized as just. They made an effort. They are entrepreneurs. They spent their night. They did fantastic things. But now this is not the case. This money is accumulating because you were the son or the daughter of a rich person, because the intergenerational transfer is not being transferred anymore, because if you have a little saving, you will get nothing in the bank. If you have a big amount of saving, you will get a lot, blah, blah, blah. But this is not just a matter of economics, it's a matter of social inequality and a matter of recognition inequality. Social inequality, I don't have time, I'll just give you, is the access and quality of the services. Universalism in services, which is Europe's main thing, is not only not being enriched, which is the promise that we gave by inventing what Tony Atkinson called the double citizenship. You are both Italian or German and European, and Slovenian and European, and Croatian and European. Not only it is not being enriched, but it is being eroded. So people feel that health will not be provided to all, that education is not going to be provided to all in the same way, and that there is a very strong territorial dimension. If you live in a rural area in Europe, you are not going to have a decent health. Your kids will not get a school as good as people living in the center. And if you live in the peripheries of a big town, you're not going to have the same quality of services that people living in the center. Surprised that then the progressive get the votes only in the centers from the bourgeoisie. They don't get the votes from the people who have been denied the chance to access it. They vote for the people in the authoritarian dynamic. So social inequality, but there is also recognition inequality. What is recognition? Is a German concept. The reference is a philosopher, Honneth. You might not be worse off than others. You might not even have your services deteriorating, but you feel out of progress. You're out of modernity. You hear all the time talk about big towns, thriving, innovation, modernity, new services, but this is for them. It is not for us. If you're a manufacturing worker in Germany or Italy, the strongest manufacturing powers of Europe, okay? Who talks about you? Who remembers every day that it is thanks to you that these countries can thrive and turn the energy on? In the 50s and 60s, these people were at the center of politics. Today they are completely abandoned. This is recognition. Their role, their values, their norms, their role in society is unrecognized. And if you are a person in a rural area, we want to talk about it, and you read all the time progressive and supposed to be left people talking about the fantastic future of towns. And you read that all the population of the world will live in the town because this is the only place where creativity can thrive. What do you think if you are 14 years old? What do you think of you being unlucky enough? If you're bright enough, you want to run away from that place as fast as you can. And we theorized that. And some of the left accepted it. Because we said, well, the richness will go because people will move to the areas where there is more money, and the market will take care of it. Market. So we purposely deprive rural areas from people. We say, this is destiny, sorry, this is the new world. Okay? This is recognition inequality. All right? And all these, as you noticed, have a very strong territorial dimension. There are territorial divides, enormous territorial divides, that, surprise, surprise, the reference is, of course, to Andrés Rodriguez Pozo and his beautiful paper, and then suddenly they vote, and you notice that there is an enormous territorial divide in vote, everywhere, in France, in England, in Italy, in Austria, in Germany. Why? It's very clear. It's inequalities. It's very simple. Branko Milanovic elephant, you all know about it. We might discuss a second about. Let's put it aside. Let's remember to discuss 10 minutes about Branko Milanovic, beautiful elephant. Why? This is the punchline. Because if the why is, well, guys, this is technological progress, this is globalization, these are the tendencies, then okay, we can say we had a lovely day, sorry, I got a train. And we have signaled, the left has signaled, the Progressive Party have signaled that there was nothing to be done about it. National governments, even when run by center-left parties, have said, oh, it's up to Europe. And Europe said, oh, it's up to IMF. And the IMF said, oh, it's up to the big corporations because the world cannot be controlled. If these were the case, you are frankly, honestly, losing your time here. Well, I do not believe this is the case. I think that the reason why inequalities grew is because wrong policies were made. A succession of wrong policies. Let's be frank with each other. We might discuss it, discussing Branko's elephant. Obviously, a technological change with automation, where workers get dispersed in different factories and the production of a pair of jeans is distributed over 15 countries, obviously a mode of production or the automation makes more difficult for labor to come together and balance the power of capital. Since we happen to live in capitalism, even though some people in the progressive side even forgot that we were living in a place called capitalism, if labor is weak, capital will, as the liberal economists used to say, capital will try to make the most by exploiting labor. Surprise. Instead of spending their nights inventing new technologies to improve productivity. So the labor struggle is a fundamental driver of technological change in the interest of humanity. The butcher does not deliver everybody's happiness just because of his own willingness, but because there is somebody pressing him, the consumer, okay, and the labor, right? That's a very simple thing. So I'm not denying that the arrival on the labor market of 400, 700, 1,400,000 workers, the increase in the supply of labor force, of course, weakened the bargaining power of labor in the West. If you're competing with somebody getting a much lower wage. I'm not suggesting that some changes were not putting pressure on inequalities. All I'm saying is that they were not matched by policies, and that if anything, the policies that we adopted since 1978 till since 1980, 91, 1981, 1985, they were all increasing inequalities. Read Danny Roderick for the global picture. You know Roderick, I'm sure you do know it. If you don't know it, read it. There's no point that Mr. Barker coming here and reading Roderick. We made completely wrong choices at international level. We destroyed the Keynesian after-war compromise. You cannot have a world in which capital flows are free to move with no control. Capitalism cannot survive a free movement of capital, because free movement of capital, their vote, their pressure is stronger than democracy. Only authoritarianism and tyranny is compatible with completely free flows of capital. I don't like the new government in my country, but people are allowed to have the governments they want without the markets voting against them, okay? And if people feel that they're being deprived of the chance to even to make tremendous mistake, then that's the end. That's tyranny, okay? That's very clear. And this is Danny Roderick. But let's come to territorial divides to finish my last 6 minutes. We made major mistakes in policies concerning other aspects, not just the international aspects. I'll mention 2 or 3 and focus on 2. By the way, why is it important to understand which policies produce the results? Well, because if we do, we are home. At least we are halfway home. We need to undo to reduce inequalities. We completely set aside the target of full employment. The European Union has never spoken about full employment. You're crazy talking about full employment. So it was only about inflation. It was only about social innovation. These ambiguous words, social innovation. If you want, we can talk about social innovation. Terribly ambiguous words, okay? Terribly ambiguous words. Full employment was off the picture. And weakening the unions. How many center-left parties in Europe have purposely weakened the unions? Contributed to the weakening of the unions? Actively weakening the unions? Weakening their chance to bargain? So we don't have to go too far to understand why we are where we are, okay? But there is something more coming to the abandoned territories and peripheries. We made 3 major mistakes, 3 major policy mistakes, which have specifically produced the territorial divides. Thing number 1, which I call the Krugman effect. Oh, Krugman is a famous left-wing economist. No, he's not. He had a terrible effect in his capacity as an economist, because he has propagated this idea that this old Marshallian idea, you're aware of the Marshallian idea. Of course, towns are a fantastic place where there are positive externalities, people come together, creativity, and blah, blah. But there are also enormously negative externalities, which have to do with congestion, which have to do with social unrest, which have to do with criminality, which have to do with poverty. Right. Who finds the balance? Well, the line in this year is agglomerate. Corporations will know better. The state is too weak. The state is too the complexity, as my friend Enrico Giovannini would say, the complexity is so enormous that the state cannot deal with it anymore. Only large corporations can deal with it. This has been the belief in the progressive side. And the role of the state has been diminished to the point of saying that the state should follow the large corporations. Amazon, deciding where to put his second headquarters, is the one who knows better, goes to the different states and tells them, what are you offering me? Offering me meaning that I'm changing the design of your towns, the design of your trains, of your social services, of your housing. I'm telling you that I'm coming to your place and giving you 50,000 workers if you do what I say you should do. That's That's what it happened. So point number one, very simple. It was theorized in the World Geography Report 2009. Point number two, more subtle, is what Di Nuovo, Danny Roderick and other people, we call it, Andres Rodriguez Pos and myself, one-size-fits-all policies. Structural reforms of the labor market, structural reforms of education, reform of the health system, they're all relevant and important, right? But we came to believe that these reforms could be designed in Frankfurt, in Rome, in Brussels, in London, in Washington, and that the design would be the same for all the people, without understanding that in the very complexity of our society, the features of the education, the feature of the school, the pedagogical course, the way you design health, the attention to the elderly, to the disabled, needs to be specified to the people that live in a community, to their specific needs. You cannot design a reform you can design the principles of a reform, but you need to hand these reforms to the implementation of the local authorities interacting with people. This is Olof Palme, Kreisky, Brandt, beautiful exchange of letters of 35 years ago. Participation. But not participation as a cheap way to get consensus. Participation as a way to extract from you, to give a chance of you, not here, but in your place, to express your vision of the future and what your needs are. What do you think is necessary to overcome the obstacles that are preventing you from expressing your life and innovation? This is the new way of governing. It's called scientifically democratic experimentalism. The reference is the American philosopher Dewey, and the current sociologist is Chuck Sable. This is a way of governing, very practical. The opposite of what we did, designing reforms that are identical for all places. And small detail, who is sitting in the offices in Rome, Frankfurt, Washington, and Brussels? Is the bourgeoisie. Is the people living in towns. What place do they have in mind when they design a reform? The place where they live. Even if they don't feel they're doing in their own interest, but the knowledge they have, the deep knowledge they have, the bus they are taking, if they take a bus and don't go by car because they got the driver, as it happens in some countries. But if they interact with the place, they know about it. So it is not one size fits all. It's reforms fitting the needs of ourselves, of the leading class. Surprise, the others are angry. They feel that the design of the education system is angry. You might ask me about rural areas. I've been working in rural areas in the last 5 years in my country. I've been working and interacting with people in Brandenburg, in Welsh, in Bulgaria. It's all over the place the same way. People feel that recognition, that they're specific, that nobody asked them what they really wanted. They were told that the reform was done in Brussels. Fantastic design. That was not fit for them. It happened not to be fit for them, right? And then finally, and I'll stop on that, since we all have realized that these two approaches, relying on corporations and designing one-size-fits-all reforms, were producing peripheral revolt, anger, we thought of the last disastrous move, which is subsidies. We decided to keep them happy by throwing money at them, okay? And this, unfortunately, was the pressure even on cohesion policy, on which I've been working in the last 15 years of my life. And when Danuta Hubern, a fantastic Polish commissioner and extraordinary lady, realized that this was the case, and we came on board and worked with her, cohesion policy, which had been designed as a tool for people, for communities, to enhance their chances, became a way for the leading class to pay them to be quiet. Money for Crete. We want to talk about Greece. I know a lot about. Money for Crete, so Crete will not be angry about the entering European Union. Keep them quiet. We know this money is not really going to be used very well, but it will keep them quiet. And you know what you do when to the people of peripheries you give them money in this way? they get the money, and they hate you because they feel mortified by you. So you have done the third most disastrous thing. And also, I'll tell you last thing. Whom you are giving the money through, you are giving the money to them through the local authorities. So you are corrupting the local authorities, basically, because you are turning the mayors, as Jacques Delors used to say, the real strength of this amazing continent, the people close to the elected officials close to the people, you're turning them into rentiers. Why? Well, because they suddenly realize they have a chance. I'm the only one who can ask the money to the capital and distribute it to the people. So you, rather than turning them into innovators, listening to us citizens, you're turning them into rentiers. That is what we did. I exceeded 3 minutes by the 20 I had given as an assignment. I have not discussed what to do, but we can discuss it now. Let me just use, if I can, 1 minute to say that what you need to do is to turn what I've said negatively, and you have a policy. You need to regain, you need to restore some of the post-Keynesian compromise. You need to put some control on capital movement. You need to reintroduce the role of full employment target. So you need some macro things, which are not my business with you today. You need to regain some control and direction on technologies. We might discuss that. It can be done. There are 5 or 6 instruments. If you want to discuss it, we'll discuss it. And as far as the policies for territories, it is clear what you have to do. Stop subsidies tomorrow. Stop kneeling to the needs of the corporation tomorrow. Empowering the local authorities and creating a national level at a European level, strengthening the European Commission in the case of Europe. This is what I asked, and I keep asking the European Commission. Strengthen your own capacity to play what Adam Smith and Amartya Sen call the role of a fair and impartial spectator. You're not a dispenser of funds to keep people quiet. You are giving money to the local communities to make sure that at local level a new way of governing comes about, bridging the gap between the authorities and the people by creating places and conditions in which people have a chance to design their own wealth, to design their own system of mobility, to design their own system of education, to do on land what they think it should be done with the land. And I'll tell you something, and I'll finish on a positive note. Europe is still such a fantastic furnace of amazing experience. I know yesterday a similar point was made of how alive this continent is with alternative design, with cooperation, with the capacity of design, communitarian welfare. Europe is full of community welfare. But there is a gap between this amazing number of experiences and the way that govern at national level and EU level govern. What we can do is reconnect these two levels. It's very simple. It can be done. And from this point of view, the revolt is an opportunity. Because the business class and the leading class is worried. And when the leading class is worried, it has only 2 chances. Either it opens up to reform, if we are clever enough to put them on the table, or it has one alternative, which is called tyranny. We are on the edge from an evolution to tyranny and an evolution to a new phase of social advancement. It very much depends on our capacity to put policies on the ground, but not inventing them. We don't need to sit down in a room and invent them. They're already there to bring the experiments that are being carried all over Europe up to the tables or where big policy decisions are taken.
Thank you, Fabrizio. I told you it would be very stimulating for your intellect. I think you gave us a lot of very interesting points to think about. And I want to reassure you, I didn't say it earlier, he's not just an advisor to the European Commission on Territorial Cohesion Policy, but he is also member of the Commission of S&D Progressive Society on Inequality, so he's helping us concretely about this redesign of our direction, our policies, and our attitude, because I think he gave us a lot of insights on the also on the perspective that we need to take as progressives. Before leaving the floor for some active participation, I want to tell you, I've seen that you have taken a lot of notes, that as usual we need to, as in all the years of the school, we will have a session at 3 p.m. for presentation of the work of the workshops, reports from the workshops, under the umbrella of the first of the plenary of the day, of the theme of the day, the identity and citizenship theme. There are other 2 workshops going on in parallel to this. So in that context, after lunch, we have to see if, and we need to find 2 of you, gender balance possibly. We should have been gender balanced too here, but one of the speakers had a disruption with transports. But we will ask for 2 rapporteurs from your side, gender balance, to present the conclusions of this workshop in maximum 3 or 4 minutes. Especially, we foresee that you could divide your roles. One explaining the whole of the discussion in a more general sense, and the second person to go more specifically on proposals that came out from the discussion. We will start the discussion now at 11. In 40 minutes, I will ask who wants to do that, and we will decide. So that I anticipate to you that in the last part of this workshop, from noon, around noon, 15 past noon, you will have some time also to work with the rapporteurs to establish what to present this afternoon. I also have some things to say, but I will come in later. First of all, if there are people from the audience that wants to intervene, questions, interactions.
Yes. I would like.
Can you present yourself?
Just your name, so.
I won't get up because this is gonna fall apart. Anyway, my name is Elias. I'm from Germany, and first of all, thank you for your contribution. It was all very interesting, and as you said, very stimulating intellectually. I would like you to touch more on why democracy and capitalism cannot survive the free movement of capital, just because I thought that was really interesting, and I wanted some more details, if you can. Thank you.
How do we do?
I propose to collect a bit and then have the round.
My name is Christian from Sweden, and going off of that point as well, you mentioned regulating capital flows, and do you recommend that it's better to do this at the national level or at the European level? Because I feel that many countries, smaller countries in particular, don't have the capacity to do it. However, a collective of countries, especially at the European level, could impose some form of capital controls which could help resolve some of the tensions you spoke about.
Hi, I'm Lisa from Germany. I was having a question about your criticism of the cohesion funds as the third part you mentioned, and I understand that it weakens or that there's a mismanagement of funds, but what's your alternative of local financial support, if not such funds, and if not channeling it to local authorities? Yeah, so what's your alternative idea about that?
Okay, I take one last, and then we have a second round after this.
I'm Fernando from Spain. I would like to talk, we have been talking about like impoverished regions and people who have been like left aside by the governments. What about the richer parts of the countries who want to like leave those nations? What about the revolt of the rich against the revolt of the rich? Can we talk about that and what to do about it?
Okay, please.
Okay. On the two questions on the capital movement, of course, whatever you can do at this level, it shouldn't only even be European, it should be international, as it was the design, the IMF, and the regulated flows of capital that lasted and allowed democracy to thrive and capitalism to deliver for 30 years after. What kind of, why do we need it? I'll be very simple. It's very simple. I mean, democracy is about conflict. Change can take place only through conflict. I don't know. Some of you probably have been working in a factory or in a firm. Some of you are entrepreneurs or are planning to become entrepreneurs. I mean, think about that. Very simple. You know perfectly well that innovation comes out of conflict. Innovation is not just adding knowledge. An innovative firm is a firm which has a board where 2 or 3 engineers and managers and possibly a public an international relation person come together and fight, and try to convince each other, as Jonathan Haidt, another very important quotation, please do read about the American psychologist Jonathan Haidt. Or as Amartya Sen says, only giving time to a discourse in which we have a chance to interact. Interacting meaning I need to understand why, not only what you're saying, but why you're saying it. And you need to understand not only what I'm saying, but why I'm saying it, from which perspective, which culture, which interest. That takes time. And we might be harsh at the beginning. And we need to have a chance to be harsh, then to reconnect empathically to each other. This is even in a factory, in a board, okay? Democracy is that multiplied power 7. You need to give democracy the time for conflict, to produce change and innovation and social advancement. It's not that people suddenly come out and say, that's not the way history, we had a new idea, we all move ahead, all happily. No, people tend to preserve their interests, and their interests need to be shaken. So there is a moment of attack or shaking. It could even be harsh. That's the way history has changed. And then after the harshness comes the reconciliation, the understanding of each other under the pressure and under the interest on the others. It's a normal, I'm saying obvious stuff. This takes time. So, social advancement needs innovation. Innovation needs conflict. Conflict needs time. Labor capital movements free don't give you time. Don't give time to democracy to have conflict. They don't give time even to the dynamic authority in Italy to take place. People have voted, 51% of the people have voted for the League and M5 Star. It's the first country in Europe, big country in Europe, which is in the hands of these. They need to be given a chance to make mistakes, to be pressurized by us, by the progressive, to be told what they're doing, to give people a chance to understand. You can't take away from the people the chance to have conflict. And capital movements, in order to gain the little benefits of that, Soros included. I mean, as Soros says, I'm betting against Europe at the moment, although I love it. I don't blame Soros. He does his job. He should do this job. But I cannot leave in his hands the destiny of the millions of people of Europe. I need to have my time to elaborate my conflict. And this is why completely free capital movements are an impediment to democracy. They are compatible with tyranny. Why? Because there is no conflict in tyranny. The tyranny one way wakes up and says, we're out of the euro. We're not having 1.5 years discussion on whether we want to be in euro. Can you imagine that people are not given a chance to discuss why they want to stay or not in the eurozone? Is that democracy? where now people are suggesting that it should be elaborated in a little room and you take people by surprise. This is a tyranny. So free floating capital movements are compatible only with tyranny in the medium long term. And the way to reshape it's obviously at the IMF level. So the way I see it is the progressive in Europe putting pressure on Europe to bargain, to renegotiate at world level a redesign or along the lines that many economists are suggesting. Rich areas, then I finish on my topic, which is the cohesion and the I hope that somebody was asking, and then what? Don't worry, I will be short and I will make a couple of references to just give you a headline. When you ask about the revolt of the rich areas of Europe, well, you know why I believe that no areas is rich forever. Even thriving metropolitan centers are always on the edge of falling in a fully competitive and uncontrolled environment, either through internal trouble. So this is why Jacques Delors always conceived, so I'm coming to cohesion policy, it always conceived the policy for cohesion in Europe as a policy for everybody, because you need to mend the fences before the fences are broken. The only untouchable rich is when the rich close themselves up with a wall, but these are not what you were referring to. We were referring to the rich areas of the country. When the rich areas, like the Londonese, close themselves to the interests of the rest of the community, they obviously lose. And you don't have, you didn't have in England, a distinction between left and right. In England, Remain was very right-wing city people, financial people, and very left-wing cosmopolitan and progressives coming together with the same interest. This is telling you that they were obviously not thinking of the people of England. So what should we do? What we have done, let me be optimistic. My claim, and it is in a paper that you can find, you Google Fabrizio Barca, I presented at the forum of Cohesion Policy 7 months ago, and I keep traveling through Europe, in Portugal, in Bulgaria, with lots of other people claiming. My claim is very simple. In the European Union in 2013, being aware of what I said before, i.e. of cohesion policy becoming a tool not only not to mend the fences, but even to increase problems, reform deeply cohesion policy, trying to move into the direction of making sure that the money would be given mostly for integrated territorial projects. So the solution is very simple. You want communities led by their elected officials to come together with non-predefined borders. What do I mean by non-predefined borders? Sometimes you need people within a town coming together. Sometimes you need alliances of large areas, of communities that see the future, that have a common vision of the future, okay? So coming together in Europe, which was the old DeLorean idea of communities, open communities, which is also the idea of Brandt, Kreisky, and Palme, it was that slowly the national borders would disintegrate and you would have Europe and vast communities coming together with common interest, okay? The Alpine community, for example, okay? Where people have been killing each other, Slovenia, Italy, and Austria, coming together and seeing, wait a minute, suppose we didn't have national borders. Do we have the same destiny? Yes. Do we have the same troubles? Yes. Do we have the same opportunities? Yes. Well, let's come together. And slowly, this is not anti-national. That was the DeLorean concept, it's not anti-national. You have the nations, but slowly you are relying on communities that do not follow the old nationalistic borders. Am I clear? And you empower them with the chance to discuss with the people and to create new communities, open communities. Don't take me wrong. Open to a dialogue with large corporations, We want the knowledge of the large corporations. When I was blaming the large corporations before, I wasn't saying that we don't need to talk to them. They have a fantastic machinery for knowledge and innovation. It's just that I, as a state, I want to have a dialogue at the same level. I don't want to empower them with choosing where development will take place. I want them to come to my desk and discuss with them, because I'm representing the people. But in order for me to represent the people these days, when people are full of ideas, I need to interact with them. And how can I interact with them truly? Only at community level, in small areas, 30,000, 40,000, 70,000, 100,000 people. Sometimes within big towns, or sometimes, as I said, alliances. This is the new concept of cohesion policy, which we call place-based approach. I can say something else if somebody wants later. I've detailed it. I have some slides that maybe on the place-based approach maybe can be shared with you. But more or less, if you want to know more, you ask me.
Thank you, Fabrizio. I saw that there were already some people with hands before, so we take the second round. I will make also a comment myself before. Please.
Yeah. Hello, thank you very much for the very insightful speeches. I was very much...
Closer.
And the policy errors that caused them got to my mind. And I was thinking about this sort of urban myopism, the fact that there are bourgeoisie hubs, cities where policy is being decided, whereas the rural areas and the rest, it's like policy-making gentrification that render the big cities the hubs of policies, and the rest are purely ignored. Can, for example, the Committee of the Regions, I've been visiting it for some years now, be revamped?
Where?
In Brussels, the Committee of the Regions. Like to have this sort of institutions revamped, to give it more power, and to have these communities unite in a trans-border attempt to regain their voices and have policy decided at a regional level that surpasses the cities and it's above the companies, it's re-empowering the people in the regions. Is this possible? Are there designs in Brussels, again a policy hub, to move from hermetic, heterogeneous policy making to a more homogeneous, implementable cohesiveness?
Thank you very much for your speech. I'm Alberto from Italy. I was thinking that Saskia Sassen talked about the fracture between global networks and local networks. If you're part of the global networks, basically, let's say you're part of a social status of international people work together in order to create more connections and increase your richness, basically. So even though I think this level is just for high qualified people, not for the many, let's say. And I think in that sense, it's interesting the case of San Francisco that I think you know, where a local authority could broke this system of investment of local corporations, like Hilton, for instance. And because they weren't like trying to gentrify in the city center, so in that sense it works. And I think that's also interesting that most developed cities are part of this global network because of no taxation zones. So, and also according to this concept, I think it's not good that Europe has these like several no taxing areas, like in the city of London, or like, but also like states which has special agreements on that. So that would be a point. So, I mean, my question is, how can socialism tackle this issue of global investments, which are top-down, in a perspective that push local authorities under their power? Thank you.
Hey, my name is Johannes, and I'm from Germany. Yesterday we had the speaker, Paul Collier, who suggested that jobs could move for example, from countries like Germany to the southern part of Europe, or from areas like London to less thriving areas in the UK, for example. And this somehow connects, if I'm right, with one of the things that you pointed out, which was the policy mistakes, for example, of the Krugman effect. And I would be interested in specific policies that could do so, and on your opinion, whether it's possible to move jobs, and what policies would best to set incentives for corporations to go to less developed centers that are away from metropole areas. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kate. I'm from Ireland. I'm actually from a periphery region myself, and I find that a lot of people in my area particularly believe that because they didn't move away to a big city or went to a university in a big metropolitan area, they almost deserve their social inequality. And it's very hard to engage people into actually fighting for a better opportunities in their local area. How can we actually empower people like that from a European perspective?
I've seen already other ends, but we will have a third round. I want to add just myself also a consideration. 2 points. One is that there is a sociologist that has written a very interesting book called The Road to Somewhere, David Goodhart, that I think has touched an important point for us to reflect on. That we have a growing divide when we look at center and periphery, also of mentality of people. The so-called, obviously, it's a kind of simplification. It's not applying to all, but it's a very important, I think, key of thinking. That we have the somewheres, people that feel strongly attached to their place, to where they live, to their neighborhood, to act for their local community. And we have the anywheres that just plane on the places and have a totally different approach to the place where they live, to the community, to their interests. And we have seen, unfortunately, in fact, a contradiction for us, because the somewheres are always those who are mostly in need of more support, but the majority of progressive voters have moved to be the anywheres, and so to have this cosmopolitan and less attached to the roots approach, and this created a contradiction also of interests and approaches to what is politics. I think this conflict came out also a bit in the description of the situation that we heard in the initial speech from Fabrizio Barca. So this creates some contradiction also of interest, because these anywheres that are the majority of or at least a very important part and more than proportional in the field of the progressives, they have some different priorities. They value more some policy issues than those of the somewheres that are more looking into some issues related to community, to local, and I think we need to find a way to reconcile these. Otherwise, we will have more and more a liberal, progressive, in a very vague sense, citizens group against the others. And this is the kind of narrative that we have seen building, for example, in Italy. And I think it was part of the success of the present governing coalition. And the second consideration I want to make is about education to participation, because we can stop just sending the subsidies, but then to co-design and to participate. We need people to be given the instruments to understand how participation can be put in place. In my opinion, and this is something I leave for discussion for Fabrizio and for you, we need to think if we have been doing enough from a European side, also with the European funds, for example, to, instead of just giving the subsidies, to give the opportunities for people to be empowered enough and to be conscious, to participate in discussing and co-designing policies together with their representatives. Because I think we like this approach, but in reality we didn't work enough to make this concrete and possible, because not enough people have the basic knowledge to participate in a conscious way to these kind of processes. And so participatory processes at local level, they tend to have a limitation due to the lack of instruments. If you look, and I conclude on this, also at young people, basically just looking at the ones that are leaving school, they don't even know very well how the mayor operates. They have a vague idea he's the chief of the city. And this doesn't happen only in Italy. I came to the European Parliament thinking this was an Italian problem, but it's not. It's very diffused. And if you don't know what the mayor does, then okay, you can be convinced that all your problems is Juncker's fault, and either you cannot really participate in a co-design of policy, etc., in my opinion. So it's a big issue. It's participatory democracy support through European funds. It's also education that is not a European competence. So I think we need to also tackle this if we want to make this step forward from just the top-down subsidy approach to a more participatory and active participation of people to the creation of policies at local level.
I think we can make a step ahead on the basis of this round in 3 points. First, let's take what we just heard now. What you said is very similar to what I suggest you to read Karen Sennett. She's a tough, but she wrote a short paper on the last book with Saskia Sosten. It's called "Can It Happen Here?" Tyranny. Can tyranny happen in the United States? Can it happen here? There is a paper by Jonathan Haidt and Karen Sennett together, which summarizes Karen. Karen is saying something similar. This is a very delicate issue. So our attitude, our behavior of a person in his or her lifetime, let's simplify, is due to two aspects. One is the moral endowment. Imagine that everybody, that's the example, you know that you have a certain sensitivity to salt or sugar in your tongue, okay? So that's the example, Jonathan Haidt. You have five now they discovered Japanese, it's the new sixth taste. I can't remember. Do you remember what? Bravo. Exactly. Sixth taste. Okay. The point is I'm not kidding. This is fundamental because we are doing politics. If you want to do politics, we need to understand, not to understand, we never understand anything, but we need to have a story about, to interpret people's behavior. So at least we have a way to move about. So imagine that people have, exactly in the same way they have different attitude to salty things, sugar, we all feel differently, they have a different moral attitude. The picture of Jonathan and Karen is slightly more complex, but for what we need, let's take Brando's. So there are some people who likes more, I used the two different words from yours, but the same, homogeneity and diversity. There are people that are fear of diversity, fear. They need homogeneity. I need to be with people that, relax, I know what your values are, and I need a place, I need to go out of my room and see the place. And other people who really want to be challenged every time by something new. I mean, there's the two characters, okay? And that's important. Then it comes something else, which is not subjective, it is objective, is the family where you're born, the way you've been educated, the way you were taken up to school. This has to do with circumstances, that Tony Atkinson says. It's not your own being, in the circumstances in which your DNA happened to come to the world, okay? Obviously we cannot interfere with the first, but we can do with the second. This is very important, because what happened these days, and that there is, exactly as Brando said, there is a polarization. And polarization are a disaster, because when there is a strong polarization due to the mechanism that all the people, all the cosmopolitan diversity liking people are sort of part of the networks, okay? And all the others are staying. This polarization, it has no solution. Now, what these analysts say is, though, is in moments, there are moments when conflict is over, when we have decided what the vision of the future, where the anti-diversity people relax, because they see the new values coming about. They see the new vision of the world. So they say, okay, it's changing, but it's not abruptly changing. I'm even part of it. I'm changing my environment. I'm changing my values. What these kind of people can't stand is sudden changes of value. I mean, some people in a Swedish village that have been learning that women and men have to share a swimming pool and possibly even be naked, which is normal, and suddenly one day they are told, since the Muslim arrived, that they need to have a special swimming pool for women, they get upset because you are challenging, you're truly challenging. We adjusted to some value. Suddenly you're telling us that women have to be separate. Oh, wait a minute. We love the Muslim, but, let's together find a way to live together. No, you're just telling me the opposite that you told me until yesterday. Okay. So there is this issue, which is very important, in policy, the reason why you'll be discussing, if I understand correctly, you'll be discussing this thing of fake news, blah, 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 blah. Let's not exaggerate the story about fake news, because now when we fail election, when we fail to convince other people, we say, I failed to convince you because you read fake news. No, I failed to convince you because I've not been speaking to you. I've been telling you my story. I've not been trying to understand what moral attitude you have. Are you a homogeneity liking people? Are you a diversity liking people? And where were you born? Okay? So there is an issue of speaking to each other. There is an issue of interaction. That brings us to the second point. This interaction needs to take place in agora, in assemblies, in democratic contexts, in which people with different views come together. Now, Branko is telling us that these are complex. They require... I hear noise that is... We need to... organizing democratic experimentalism requires competence in anthropology, in psychology, in economics, and in statistics. There is no discourse without numbers. There is no discourse without empathy. There is no discourse without capacity to understand how you run a group. And this calls for competencies. So democratic experimentalism, i.e. what we need to reconnect to the people and to give them the sense that yes, social advancement is possible, work on it, give your time on it, it can be done, requires competence. Who has this competence? Are we investing? The state, the public administration. Of course, the new world is not just about the public administration. The new world, as my friend Giovanni Moro and many other people, is a world of civic organizations. Because with parties collapsing, people have been gathering around civic organizations. And these, thank God, they exist. These are giving the life to the democracy in Europe these days. But they work on a single sector, on a single issue, on a single community. You cannot ask them to play the role that Branko was talking about. So coming back to cohesion policy, to your question about cohesion policy, you do need an investment in public administration. You need a major renewal of public administrators. The reason why the EU today has fatigue, the reason why the EU speaks to the people with unbearably bureaucratic documents that really go over people's heads, is that it is not investing in a new generation of people in different multidisciplinary competencies. In my proposal for cohesion policy, to come to the issue, I suggested don't change once again the regulation. It's not a matter of rewriting the rules. It's a matter of implementing the rules by investing in human resources. I suggested to the European Commission what I suggested to the European Commission 7 years ago. Employ 500 new pioneers of cohesion policy. What we need is the European Commission not to have one meeting a year in Sicily or Bulgaria or Brandenburg, meeting with the officials in a closed room and then making a pretend to be civic forum, this ridiculous civic forum they were doing around Europe, where people come to the room, you speak, ciao, arrivederci. I mean, you need actually 500 people that discuss and live. I want a German, a Belgian, and a Bulgarian living in Sicily for 7 years and interacting with the Sicilian government, challenging it, giving help in designing, in implementing at local level, in making sure that people have truly a chance to speak out. So they need to go to the meetings. They need to add value. This is the famous European value added. European value added can come only through people working for the public administration. So this is the implementation side of what I said before that Branko has taken out of me. But there was a very important question before, which we should not ignore. The question was very clear. How do we interact with the global investors in a way which is not through the closed circle of the networks, okay? Is there a way to interact with the global investors? Rather than giving you a theoretical answer, I give an example, sometimes goes through more quickly. We are in Tuscany, okay? And one big German investor who is working on golf, come si dice golf in inglese? Golf, you know? Okay. It's a corporation, it's one of the 5 in the world, arrives in a little village in Tuscany and tell you, we know what we do with your place, ba, 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 ba. The people, the place, suddenly see money coming, chance for them, but they somehow resentful because they're attached to their land. What is our future? They don't understand. Okay, so there are 2 risks. One is rejecting the corporation, no, we do nothing, or is accepting what the corporation came with. Am I clear? They answer in a different way. They brought on board a couple of young, fantastic people. They studied the case, they studied what people wanted, and they said, what is your vision of your villages 10 years from now? They built a negotiating table, they called the gate, the German corporation arrived, and they said, okay, we are ready for it, but, boom, boom, boom. You know, the German corporation said, yes, interesting, but we need to think about it. And they left. They went back to Germany. 2 weeks after, they came back with a different team. It was a real team. Do you see what I mean? They uplifted the quality of the people within their own organizations because they realized that they were to have a true negotiation. They went through a negotiation, and now they've done it. But they've done it the way the people felt it should be done. Okay, am I being clear how you negotiate with large corporations? You don't do what they told you it is good for you, but you see what is their interest, what they're ready to offer, how you can make the most of their arrival to make sure that it's not just a transient 5 years and then they fly away and you become an abandoned territory. So it can be done. It can be done. One last point. You might say, aren't we pushing it a bit far? Are we sure, we should ask ourselves, that some of these territories don't have a future? It might be, right? There might be a territory where there is not real opportunities. Yes, there might be, although my friend Andres Rodriguez Pose, which I recommend to read, says that it's almost no place with not a chance, providing you give it a chance. And let me say something about capitalism. There is one, we talk about tendencies, but I didn't mention one very important tendency that we have forgotten. That Lancaster, an economist in the 1960s, forecasted. With the growing of per capita income in the West, and with the new middle class coming from Branko Milanovic elephant, which nobody has asked about. I'm desperately trying to have a question on Branko. But, with the new middle class from China and India, now we have about 800,000, 1 million middle class in the world. These middle class express a diversified demand for consumer goods. The more, Lancaster forecasted, the more per capita income rises, the more people don't want a tomato. They want a particular typology of tomato. The more people don't want grain, they want, and suddenly, all over the world, we know and we see today a diversification of products that is going back to old seeds, the banca dei semi, the bank of the old seeds. This is amazing opportunities for little territories all over the world that have their little niche of diversity. But you need to give people like your age that I've met every day in the last 5 years of my life, this is not something for the state. Watch out. It's not the state that decides what to be done. It's the young people traveling and suddenly say, we are ready to put our brain, we left the place, we went to a university, we met some people in international relations, we are coming to the land, and we suddenly discover that this product can be hit the international market. And now they have the difficulties. Why? Because they are about 28, 30, they're about to have kids, and they wonder, my kid will be born here? What is the quality of the school? Terrible. I got my old father or mother that might be coming with me. What happens if he has a heart attack? 70 minutes to go to the closest hospital. So they say, no, sorry. I will not come to this area. I will not come to this periphery. I will not come to this rural area. This is where, again, the state comes into the game twice. Once, because it's the film director that provides the competence that makes the democratic deliberative process possible. But it's also the state that designs his schools, his health, his intervention in a way that is shaped to the specific need of your area. So your people, you asked before I finish on your question, you asked how do I convince these people that it's worthwhile making an effort, speaking out, in two ways. First, by creating a methodology, a forum, where they feel that they are not wasting their time. Too many times they're spoken out and nobody has listened. Or they said, yes, of course, then nothing happened. So first, creating an incentive for them to speak out, because suddenly they see that there is a continuous interaction, not a person arriving one day and disappearing for the next year. First. Second, by adding knowledge and giving them, hey, I'm making you stronger because I bring here the large corporation and I give you a chance to negotiate with the big guys. You, your own, didn't have the strength to do it, but I give you the strength to discuss with them. And third, by saying, hey, don't worry, there is a chance with the new information society. I can redesign the school. What would be the school that you would love to send your kids to? That, the reason I'm saying with a bit of passion is because I'm doing it in this country, because German people are doing in Brandenburg, because some people in Britain are doing in the Welsh areas, because the Portuguese people, the very interesting Portuguese government is doing it now all over Portugal. So we are not talking about a fantasy and a utopia, although my friend Giovannini has resurrected the word utopia. He says quite rightly we shouldn't be worried to use it, but in the sense of something that we cannot achieve. It is happening. What is not happening is that we, as a political force, we are not able to extract from these experiences the essence that then say, hey guys, we have a future. This is the future and it can be done and it is even happening. Don't vote for them, which is cupio dissolvi. Who does? Do you understand what cupio dissolvi is? Cupio dissolvi, the joy of destroying everything, the enjoyment of destroying everything. Some of the vote for so-called populists, I don't call them populists, some of the vote for the authoritarian dynamic parties. It is not a vote to improve your condition, but it's a vote to make sure that the conditions of the other is as bad as yours.
In the front. Davanti.
Hi. My question is about economic fear.
Sorry, I missed you.
I'm Manuel from Spain,
okay.
And I want to talk about economic fear. When the crisis hit hard on Europe, especially from 2008, 2010, and it hit us hard in the south, social democracy left out so many people, and they started letting a lot of people out of their social point of view, that people felt alienated. And they had two options, and that's something we've seen very clearly in Spain and in France. They could go left, like to Podemos, they could go to La France Insoumise or to Syriza in Greece, or they can go even worse, and that's going left, to go liberal. And we can see that in France with Macron, and we can see that in Spain with Ciudadanos, that it's going more and more. How does social democracy fight this now, when in the worst years of the crisis, even from socialists in the north, were applauding conservative governments in the south? Thank you.
My name is Luca. I'm from Georgia. Thanks for your lecture. I think when we talk about the revolt of the peripheries and the center, firstly we have to define the periphery. It can be defined differently. For example, for Europe, it can be the European South, so-called PIGC countries, which were suffering under the foreign debt crisis. For instance, it can be the Eastern Europe, or more particularly, it can be far Eastern Europe, I mean by this Eastern Partnership countries. Their realities are totally different. For example, if you fight in Europe austerity and tendencies of populism and authoritarianism, in Eastern Europe we have the market fundamentalism, and I think that what we fight and how we fight is also different. For example, you have strong leftist parties and traditions and organizations, and what we have, it's mostly the leftist individuals without strong leftist parties or something like that. And what we got, it's also the demonization of leftist parties, because after the breakup, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, if you feel leftist in your own country, you can be discriminated and compared with the Stalinism and so on. I have the question, how we can consolidate our fight with the Eastern European countries, I think who are suffering more in the leftist sense than the Central European countries. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Emilie. I'm from the Netherlands. I was very interested by this concept of democratic experimentalism that you explained. And I was wondering, what's the role of social media in this sort of new type of dialogue? Because has social media facilitated dialogue? Has it polarized it? Because one sure thing that I think we can say is that social media have definitely come to be the new forum for dialogue today, at the expense of, for instance, political parties, which used to be at local level the sort of places where discussions were taking place. Whereas now if you go to local branches of specifically social democratic parties, you find very often, so it's that situation of people who are no longer engaged with politics. So I'm wondering, as a second question, what is the role of political parties? Can they keep being these sort of aggregators, the bridges between citizens' requests and local authorities, or are they bound to disappear? Can they adapt sort of to social changes and renew themselves?
Hello, my name is Anthony. I'm from the Czech Republic. So my question is, we haven't really talked much about the labor movement in Europe and unions. which have seen a steady decline since, say, the 70s, 80s. In the Czech Republic, one of the great sort of forces recently for social progress past 5-10 years has been the union movement with their campaign for higher wages. We have in Eastern Europe, again, we have fairly low wages, especially compared to productivity. And what do you think is the role of the labor movement in the sort of the recognition of the peripheries? And unfortunately, there is high unemployment in some of these peripheries, and since the labor movement represents workers, how does a labor movement represent those without work? Okay, thank you.
Hello, I'm Nikos from Greece. I think that people are depressed because of the politics. So, at least in Greece, there's a trend that independent initiatives and independent groups are trying to plant the seed of politics in the citizens. Do you think that it's able, the social democracy, hug all these initiatives?
I just want to add that I've seen as a politician this as a big and an activist, first of all, as a big issue, the issue of the meaning of participation. In my experience, I've heard a lot of debates in Italy about the structure of the parties, the solid party, the liquid party, the thin, the heavy party, etc. But then the problem is, if I look at the local functioning of the local sections of the parties, they too often, and so there is no credibility in opposing those parties that don't have any democracy and are privately owned, like at least one that is now the government in Italy. It's because this local, when the local section is a place where you participate, but your participation doesn't really affect any of the decisions, then taken at any level, then you will lose the will to participate. In my opinion, this is a very, very delicate thing, because to regain trust of people to participate, it's a huge issue, and parties sometimes have damaged instead of helping, supporting it, because what we heard about local participation also to discuss and to empower policy making, it could have been done more also through the parties. And some of you don't know, but Fabrizio has been working on this in a project also related to some political forces. But it's not easy when, as I said, there is, unfortunately, if I look at my country, but I know this can be applied to others, if there is the eradicated distrust by many people that this participation will produce some results in terms of what has been deliberated. It's this effectiveness of the results of this participation, of the possibility to really influence the decisions at all levels. It's something that has been, I think, still not discussed enough. Also at a very, very small and local level, because again, we have a lot of discussion about whether we need parties more centered on local administrators, on local government people, and less about activists and interest bearing people. But the truth is that we have seen an incapacity of local party section to really have a dialogue and a constructive relation with the local government people. And this is already the basic problem in my opinion. So there was a total disconnection, even a rivalry, not in a good way, in a conflict, in a positive conflict way, but a kind of negative circle that has been happening. I've seen that in Italy, but again, being active on the PES and traveling and meeting, I know it's not Italy only in this situation. I think this is something we need to work together on.
I will not be able to answer in a decent way to the first two questions. Extremely difficult, and I'm not a tuttologo. I don't. The only way that what basically the two first questions told us is that within the other problems we have a double divide within Europe. One is sort of within roughly south and north, and the other is between east and west, with two very. The first one has to do with the conflictual, unempathic way in which even within the same family of parties, or social democrat parties, the crisis of 2008 was tackled. That's a wound, very bad wound. Thank God that now Germans and Greek can speak to each other in a nicer way, but I can tell you the wound is still there. When the Spiegel, during the Italian crisis, comes out with unbearable pictures on the first, this is bad, it's bad for all of us. When I meet my social democrat friends in Germany and I'm teached on the Italian complacency with spending money, throwing away money, I feel hurt deeply for the lack of empathy, for the lack of reciprocal understanding. So there is a wound, there is a bad wound, is there. And the other wound with the East, I understand, I don't know, I know all the, but I know Poland more. And the wound of the failure of Solidarność is still with us. That's in my mood. We have not understood why Poland, who had all the chances to move away from tyrannic communism to socialism, why Poland, who had built this fantastic experience of Solidarność, has ended up the way it has ended up now. We have not analyzed enough. So we have two wounds within Europe, within the family of and to me that has to do with how we stop discussing. There isn't a common part. I know that there are amazing people like Anna and lots of other people who are making an effort to try to build a community of S&D. Lots of people that are doing. But I don't feel this is not, there isn't a European party. There isn't a European party when 12, 14 people discuss all the time, shout in their room to each other and build a common strategy. There isn't a common strategy. So the only thing I can say, your two questions were very appropriate. They're beyond my head. I think I'm rather competent person in many fields, but this you pointed to the issue. Unless that issue is tackled properly within the family of social democrats, we are not getting. I'm more equipped to answer to the other three questions. The role of social media, very important point in democratic experimentalism. We are used now to imagine the web as the tool used by the trolls, the dynamic authoritarian parties to spread fake news. Yes, it can be used in a completely opposite way. It's a fantastic, in my own personal policy, I've been minister, I've been director of Cohesion Policy in this country, I've been polity activist, and now I'm a member of civic organizations. In all my competence, I can tell you that social media that don't require a lot of money to be run by young people at local level are a fantastic tool to improve the quality of information and the monitoring of public authorities. But we are not discussing enough about this role. They are a fundamental, who asked me about, when I ask a place-based approach, they are a fundamental ingredient of a place-based approach. If you empower a community of 40,000 people and you commit the mayors, the local authorities to actually deliver some measurable outcomes, monitorable outcomes, then who spread the information? The social media can do it, and I've seen it done. Fantastic. They are on the neck of the politicians, making sure that their commitment to the community is actually being implemented in a way that was impossible 20, 30, 40 years ago. So you have, as Eugenie Morozov says, you have the double chance to using the new social media in a disastrous, polarizing, antithetic way, or in a way to actually as a tool of democratic experimentalism. The role of parties, I make just a statement. In my belief, we will never be able to do without. Democracy needs this particular kind of intermediary. But having that in mind, I do not see, and I don't need to say anything because Branko said it, I've tried myself within the Democratic Party in Italy to convince the leadership of this party not to do A or B. I'm a governance guy. I design governance, okay? That's my speciality. I could try to convince them by working on the ground, and not just by blah-blahing, but by doing experiments around the country to redesign the working of the governance, the resistance of the existing everybody. The resistance of the top leaders of the Democratic Party was incredible. And it was a resistance basically based on one thing. If we set this new governance, we'll be challenged. I'm very frank with you. I need to share what I think. So once again, it's the old guard. It does not matter more left-wing, less left-wing, anti-Renzi, pro-Renzi. It was a similar reaction. We don't want this new world in which there is permanent debate, in which the territorial units are given a chance to speak out. We do not want it, because the way of selecting the cadre will be then open. We don't want this world. So this is happening all over. As if the Social Democrat Party will, as we say, arroccarsi under the attack of the so-called populists, if they will close themselves and close themselves and close themselves, then there is no chance. So on the one hand, I think that there is no future without, I don't believe in little parties, I believe in big social democrat parties that work in the way more or less the Social Democrat Party, SND, is working. But there is an issue of renewal, but not abrupt renewal of the people leading, of a new methodology to select the cadre. In this picture, there are two other forces in your general picture of the world that can help. They are not substitute. One is active citizens organization. Catholic, Lutheran, laik, ex-Marxist, proto-liberal. They're sprouting all over because people don't go into parties. They're coming out like flowers everywhere. Okay, on one hand, and then the unions. These are the two questions. These two forces are fundamental in this phase. These civic organizations are made of people who are actually changing their little world. They're doing fantastic things, but they're aware that their action, the beautiful actions, will not change systemically the world. They might change the little community, they might improve the quality of life of poor people, they might make a school better. So they in a sense, they are demanding parties. They would like to have a party, a social democrat party, capable to listen to them. So my line, and Enrico Giovannini would say the same, look around in Europe. These civic organizations have two chances. Either they turn into parties, this is partly what happened in Spain, they transform themselves into a party, or they stay separate, they organize citizens, but they manage to create alliances. Without creating a party, they create alliances that produce policy proposals, ideas. A bit like in the US when it works for the Democratic Party. Free organizations that represent a constellation of independent organizations around the Social Democrats. This could be an interesting evolution. But it requires the Social Democrat parties to listen to them openly. Okay, union. I think the union have performed a very important defensive role in these last 20 years. keeping. In Italy, for example, many people are members of what used to be unions very close to the Social Democrat parties that now are, but the people are mostly voting for the five-star movements, okay? The majority of people, CGL, for example, the most left-leaning union in this country, are voting for M5 star. But the union is still playing a very important role. Let me say one thing. There is an issue of wage differential, minimum wage, of wage differential. There is also a very important issue, and our German friends can tell us a lot, but even Italians and even Swedish people, and even, which is the role of labor in corporate governance. Europe has invented not only cooperatives, many, if you look around, labor plays an interesting role in the corporate governance of corporations all over the places, and we have not been working enough anymore on this aspect. And third, very important one, at EU level is the we discussed it in the group, is the European Union social pillar, the European pillar of social rights. Europe came out with these beautiful documents, dare to use the word rights, very dangerous words because it creates expectations, and now we need to deliver something, and it is up to the Social Democrat, specifically looking towards the next election, to discover one or two. My friend Frank Vanderbroek claims that the main issue should be social contribution. You will be discussing what, but it is obvious that together with the Union, the Social Democrats should take one of the rights of the European Pillar of Social Rights and turn it into the all over the place campaign in the next period. Yeah.
I think it's time, before we proceed for other interventions, to decide the rapporteurs. Who wants to do it? Okay, other candidates? One girl? Okay. Okay, we got them. Great. So next speakers, you asked, I think.
I'm Paul. I'm from Ireland. So my question is just about these local authorities having strong relationships with the firms. Recently, in Seattle, in America, there's a big controversy about the city authorities raising a tax on these huge corporations such as Starbucks and Amazon that were founded in Seattle and have very strong links to the community to help fight the homelessness problem. And there was a huge backlash from the community saying that this was an unfair tax and that Seattle was mismanaging funds and was not approaching the homelessness problem in the right way at all. So my question is, how do you approach this issue of local communities after these firms come in and enhance the communities, having a greater sense of loyalty to these firms than their local governments? Thank you.
Okay. My name is Alexis. I'm from France. And I wanted to ask you about, you talked a lot about new generations and people who can work and etc. And I wanted to ask you about what we could call the demographic gap in Europe, and about demographic gap about older people, and in terms of cohesion policies, how do you do to actually integrate older people into the whole system of Europe, and in terms of cohesion policies, because those are the people who face a lot of inequalities in terms of wealth, in terms of also social recognition. And those are also the people who are the most Eurosceptics. So those are the ones who, for example, voted the most for Brexit with a huge majority. And how do you do in terms of cohesion policies to integrate older generations and people who can no longer work in general?
sorry, technically. I know that we can also work during lunchtime, but I think we are already pretty cooked. Maybe we could use lunchtime to eat. Perhaps if we could, yeah. So perhaps if we could sort of conclude here at 12, and if you want I can stay. We use the rest of the time to bring our two volunteers and try already to work together their synthesis for this afternoon plenary, and therefore I will also take a bit of time to talk about yourself guys. I think in these 2 introductory days, also from our secretariat, we talked a lot about S&D and the elections. I would like to have the opportunity to tell you why you are here and how you have been selected. Some things have already been said. I just one it's important for me because I would like Fabrizio to hear 2 things. The first one, you have not been selected because you told us that you are a member of one of our parties. Some yes, the other no. The second, but you share a number of concern, a number of progressive values, and the tension for active participation, citizenship, the tension that something is happening and it is the moment to move. And the second reason, which is important for me to hear, you talked about academic multidisciplinarity. It is becoming obvious, but until 5 years ago it wasn't, and we have also paid attention to put you guys in a mixture of economic study, social study, anthropology, international, in order to build, or I'm not saying that they will be part of your 500, I wish they would, but the idea is already to give them the opportunity to exchange from an interdisciplinary point of view about what we are discussing now. So sorry, I don't know if my proposal for 12 could be accepted by the panel.
Sustain it fully. Do you have other things? Otherwise, we will ask Fabrizio to answer.
Okay, 2 points. I'll take first the demographic one. Of course, the general demographic crisis or decline of Europe as a whole also triggers the issue of migration, which is surprisingly discussed even by social democrats as an emergency when it's going to be with us for the next 50, 80 years. The Branko Milanovic elephant, which you haven't asked me about. Can I ask how many of you know the Branko Milanovic elephant? One person. Okay. I really strongly recommend you to tweet to, Branko Milanovic is an economist. He's at CUNY. He's a Serbian origin, lives in the States, and he's very active on Twitter. He's very funny, very interesting, very radical. So I recommend you to follow him on Twitter, and you will see an elephant appearing now and then. The elephant of Branko Milanovic is a chart. It would be interesting to have it on the... Is Anna preparing the elephant? Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, while I will, Anna, it's great. Thank you, Anna. I will carry on the demographic. Then we come to the elephant, and I'll take your point about aging. We come to migration in a second. It is a fundamental issue. There are 2 issues in Europe, the 2 social issues which are horizontal. One is children, and the other is children in the EU definition, which is up to 18, and the elderly. Remember Tony Atkinson, 12 years ago, suggesting the European Union to take the issue of children as a fundamental issue. It was not done. and the issue of elderly that is becoming increasingly. I'll give you a very territorial, since we're discussing about territorial inequalities, there is one of fantastic opportunities that Europe has. Europe is a rugged territory where there are many rural areas, but the rural areas of Europe, of large area parts of Europe, are not like in the US. They're not plain. They are rugged, hilly, mountainy, with very different climate. Follow me for a second. Follow me about nature. Nature is important, okay? Europe has got a specific kind of nature. There are areas, very old culture, medieval time, cultural heritage, natural heritage, change of winds, change of temperature in the vicinity, new products. Remember I discussed before, different kind of tomatoes, different kind of artichokes, different kind of commodities coming out of the ground. Elderly people enjoy living in these areas a lot, even going and spending their lifetime, the last 20 years of their life in rural areas. Rural areas offer a fantastic place for elderly people to regain the quality of their community. And I'm not a state guy. I'm not saying we should send the elderly there. I'm saying the elderly are moving there. Okay, working class British people. I mean, manufacturing working class. A guy who probably earn about £1,500 a year in his life can now afford to live in a rural areas and become a king or a queen for the rest of their life. My country is full of elderly British people, Irish people, Austrian people. Austria is full of these people. They are spreading all over. So rural areas offer a fantastic opportunity, and many young people are perceiving it in a. Listen to this point; it's important. They are acting both as social worker and capitalistic entrepreneurs. This is the novelty of this new world. The distinction between a socially minded person and an entrepreneur is becoming less relevant. There are lots of young guys that actually feel that they are preparing a good life for themselves, earning well, but also doing good. There are enormous amount of people working, providing new care for elderly in these areas. So the state should not design that. It is not up to the state to sit down in Frankfurt and design a new regulation for elderly people living. I can see the bureaucrats in Brussels sitting down there and designing the new rules of the game for elderly people. No. It's understanding where the world is going, what obstacles are preventing young people and elderly people to do even more. Maybe sometimes they are obstacles having to do with the fact that in some of these areas, in Austria, in Poland, in Bulgaria, are areas where there's not clear the ownership, because when these places are abandoned in rural areas, you don't know who owns it. So you need a law, but you don't need a law to say who has the right. You need a law to make sure that a land or a beautiful building that has been abandoned for 30 years by some immigrants is everybody's. Am I clear about it? It's a new role of the state, not deciding as in the old social democrat top-down state. It's a new social democrat state that perceives where society, the good trends of society, and seconding them, making it easier for people to do what they seem to be wanting to do anyway. Am I clear? This concept is Amartya Sen. Let me very clear. Let's do a tiny bit of philosophy at the end of it. This is the concept of Amartya Sen called sustainable substantial freedom. Okay? Please, some of you, have a look at his book, An Idea of Justice. Okay? What is the equality that we are pursuing? Is everybody identical to others? No. Is everybody having the same income everybody else? No. Is removing the obstacles. This is the objective of a social democrat. Is removing the obstacles that are preventing the people from living the life they would like to have and they feel they have the chance to live. Substantial freedom is not just procedural freedom, the freedom to speak out, the freedom to vote, the freedom to move, but it's also the freedom to have a substantial chance to live the life they would like to live. Okay? Why sustainable substantial freedom? Because you want to have it for yourself, but you want to make sure that your kids and nephews, you're not depriving the kids and nephews to have the same chance. Right. Now, this kind of objective, which is the objective, the redefined objective, the Amartya Sen redefined objective of any social democracy, for those of you who have some Marxist knowledge, is not very different from Marx's manifesto. I might remind to you that Marx's manifesto suggested that the objective of socialism was to make sure that to give everybody the chance to be substantially free so that we all would be. It's not very different. That was a big failure in the east of Europe, the big failure of the Russian Revolution. So these opportunities, this chance, it can today be fulfilled by removing obstacles. How do you ensure people substantial freedom? By pinning down the obstacles to this freedom and tackling it. We don't have Branko, so the way to tackle the democracy... we have it. We have the conflict with the noise. So anyway, migration is the same. Let's not take migration. I mean, it's easy to say. I know you know it. I'm not pretending that I'm the one. Everybody says that migration is an opportunity. We should turn it into an opportunity. But how do you do it? You cannot do it at national level. You have to work down on the ground. The other day, if some of you know Italian, unfortunately it's not translated in English, we had a meeting together with the team of Enrico Giovannini. We had a meeting in Italy of all civic organizations comparing successful and unsuccessful way to absorb migration. Situations with the migrants regenerated culturally a place which was dead because they brought new technologies, because there were amazing engineers from Syria, because there were Romanian coming, European and non-European. The Romanian bringing new methodologies to deal with and other places in which we didn't manage to deal with them. Again, we are back to your issue about local communities. People find it difficult because the first thing, they take it as a challenge. So you need to have somebody giving them the capacity to understand how it can be turned to an opportunity. The same is true for a peripheral area of an urban place. Milan, not far from here, has some very unsuccessful areas and some extremely successful ones, as all our towns in Europe. So if you look at it, even the distinction between south of Europe and north of Europe, Mezzogiorno, these are old, they're gone. The issue is about localities where people have managed to have the capacity to turn demographic decline, even in an opportunity. I'm offering a chance for elderly people from town, or I'm absorbing the migrants and flourishing because and becoming attractive. And become attractive because you are the community where the migrants are doing fantastic things, and people want to go and see. You become even attractive for tourists who want to go and see the community thriving. Now.
There is, yeah, exactly. You have to explain.
What is the Branko? Is how much is the increase in GDP per capita of people according to their decile. So the 5 means the 5 poorest people in the world. This is the world graph, and the 95 is the last 5%, the richest 5%. Is that clear? This is telling you how they did in the last, between 98 and 2008. Okay? If you are at 0, means that in those 20 years, you're, on average, the people at the 5% poorest people in the world have not improved by 1 inch their condition. Is that clear? So what does it tell you? That the poorest of the poorest have done very badly. Okay? That the middle class, so I mean us, we have done very badly. These between 65 and 85, this was us, not the richest, but the middle class. We have done very badly. In the 20 years, these people have not improved their condition. Is that clear? Who has done very well? 2 groups. The people who have between the 25 and 50, who are they? Who are they? The Chinese and the Indian. Okay? This is the new middle class. This is the sprouting middle class. This is a fantastic achievement of the last 20 years. We must love it as social democrats, because the world, whatever troubles there has been, the globalization has allowed these people to come out. We're talking about 500 millions, 600 millions new middle class. But of course, there is a relation between them doing very well and us not doing as well. What I claimed, and this was not a natural process, that this failure is partly due to the wrong policies. Is that clear? So we have not dealt well with the opportunity coming from them becoming richer, and we have done badly. Who has done very well? Who? Them. The top 5%. My 5,000 adult, mostly male adults in Italy who have quintupled the share of wealth. Okay? So they are ruling the world. Okay? A last point on Branko's, very important one: migration. Where does it come from? It comes from here. So we have a double problem: that we had a challenge on the labor market by ourselves, and we are then moving to where we live. So we are under challenge in the West. Yes, we are. So I haven't claimed all the time that we are not, but all I'm saying is that we can turn this challenge into an opportunity. Last point was the first question. It was on the example of Seattle, local authorities, firms. How do you interact with the firm? What is necessary is, I restart from my example on the golf course in Tuscany. You cannot deal with the problems after the investments. You need to deal with the problem before the investments is done. But after the investments are done, the shape of the town has already changed. People perceive that as a decision which has been taken in some closed room. So the only way to deal with it is to make sure that the willingness of a large corporations to move into a town or to do an investment is being its social and environmental impact is openly discussed ex ante in the community. And this mythology of NIMBY, a mythology of NIMBY. NIMBY was invented by neoliberal to blame the people. Okay, it's another of this invention. NIMBY is a complete invention. Okay, of course, if you're presenting people with a fait accompli, without explaining to them why it was decided, who discussed it, what the consequences are, what do you expect? What do you expect? You wouldn't like it in your garden. Of course you wouldn't like it in your garden. But it's not because people are selfish, not in my backyard, and do it there. Because people want to have a say, want to understand, and want to have a chance to say no. So there is a way, very simple way, and I'll tell you something. Please search for The Economist, February. You will discover it because it has a cover of a periphery. This is a good end for our conversation. We talk about peripheries. Why I'm quoting The Economist? Because I started my conversation by saying that there is an opportunity, that even the dynamic authority, even the rebellion, even the crisis of social democrat parties is an opportunity if we can grab it. The Economist has suddenly in February comes out with a cover of a periphery, abandoned periphery. And then under the article says, if we don't take care of the territorial inequalities soon, the anger of the people who voted for Trump and Brexit will kill all of us. Aha! So you woke up. You finally woke up. The Economist woke up. And the way The Economist wakes up, when he wakes up, he says, I've understood it first, nobody understood it before. False, because there were lots of people who had understood it before. But I don't care. I don't care. Now they have they got the message. Do you understand the point? They got the message from Brexit. It's sad. It's sad that we needed Brexit for them to wake up, and Trump. But do you see why I call it an opportunity? In the article, please read the article because it has to do with your question. the economists, very frankly, in the classical economist way, witty, and now what we discovered it, we know what should be done and not be done, they discuss the location of the second headquarters of Amazon. And the economist argues, until yesterday, we predicated that the methodology was the following. Amazon people discussed between themselves what they need for their own corporate profits, not only corporate profits, corporate empowerment of the managers, which, as you know, is more important than profits for managers. So Amazon decides what it needs, then it goes around shopping in the US, asking, what do you offer me? Are you ready to give me that? Detaxation? Or give you a new railway going? Or can we destroy completely that area full of strange people that we don't know who they are? Or we don't want them. They're not going to be consumers of our, they're useless for us. So this is the way that corporations do it. Quite rightly. I'm not a moralistic. Capitalism has to be tough, okay? I'm not blaming the corporation for doing it. The Economist says, until yesterday we said that was the best way. And we claimed that in this way, Amazon would end up delivering good for everybody. We were wrong, the Economist says. We were wrong. Why? For two reasons. First, because Amazon, by doing so, is reshaping a town in a way that maybe is inconsistent with people's interest. Second, because corporations will end up ending always in the same megalopolis and will deprive small areas of jobs. So let's stop this system. The state should regain somehow the decision power of where Amazon goes. So, yes, there is a danger. Yes, there is a, what was the title of our thing? Revolt. We are social democrats. We think that revolt by themselves go nowhere. Revolt might even bring to power tyranny, but the revolt has woken up the giants and is giving us a chance to be more bold, but we need brain discussions, and we need, most of all, and this is not just rhetoric, you believing that the world can be changed. Because if you don't believe that we can change the world, then the world will certainly not change.
So thank you, Fabrizio. To be honest, I've been here for the third time. This, I think, was the best workshop I have been moderating in these years. I'm sure you have been hit by the provocations that also always Fabrizio is able to give to stimulate our thought like I was. I'm sure you have been enriched with a lot of ideas also to how to practically practice your role as activists and social democrats to change the world concretely. I want to thank you for participating, and I would like to say that now, as we are closing, you will be able now to have some time before the lunch to consult with the chosen rapporteurs to put together your act for the after lunch report of the workshops. Thank you very much, and see you soon.
So I need a vote. Who would fancy 10 minutes break for a cigarette, a coffee, or do you prefer well, wow, it's difficult. Who would fancy a 10-minute break to stretch one's leg? Who would prefer to remain here and to work until the rest abstain? I think that you are already gone. So I think that in a very authoritarian way, I would say that we have 10-minute break. Okay. But 10 minutes, let's try to come back here and work together.